Drilling fluids touch just about everything in the drilling process. We're here to deconstruct the drilling process and drilling fluid concepts to provide a deeper understanding of our industry. In each episode, we'll share information, talk to interesting people, and maybe share a few stories along the way. Welcome to the Flowline, a production of AES Drilling Fluids, brought to you by Matt Offenbacher and Justin Gauthier.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Flowline. Matt and I are here in the studio. Matt, I have a random question right out of the gate here, just to as a launch pad here. When's the last time you've seen something for the first time?
Well, without going into customer details, a customer had an issue yesterday where it was like, I've never seen that before.
No way.
And it was a mud issue on a rig. I mean, it wasn't the mud, but it was affecting the mud.
Yeah.
And it was like,
interesting.
Well, that's a head scratcher.
Okay. Is it, without divulging, can you share any tidbits?
I mean, it appears to just be, some interactions with the formation that they drilled into, that affected the rheology.
Okay.
But it was a very interesting phenomenon, and we were able to fix the issue on site, and then we're obviously doing all our analytical stuff to both directly identify what it was, and then subsequently, make sure we can stay ahead of it if it happens again.
Interesting.
So.
Yeah, well, it's funny how many wells you can drill and still you can experience things for the first time, and that's just the oil field.
Yes.
And a lot of just unsolved mysteries happen, and
yes.
It's just like, how can we be doing the same thing over and over, but yet still have different things happen to us? It's strange, but it kind of keeps us working and solving problems.
Well, now I want to flip the question on you. I mean,
well, mine's nothing work related, but.
Good for you.
It was actually, and again, no judgment at all, but I seen for the very first time a gentleman with 3 nipples.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a regular shirt off environment,
yes.
So it wasn't anything obscure and odd, and I don't dabble in on those types of grooves. But I had a second take, and then I asked a buddy of mine. I said, "Did so and so?" Am I seeing things, or did he actually have 3 nipples? He's like, yeah, no. He's like, you've never seen that before? And I was like, well, no, I have not seen that.
There's a James Bond with it.
Yeah.
One of the villains, that was...
Yeah.
And then The Simpsons made fun of it and always called it the superfluous third nipple.
Yeah.
So,
I always thought it was just kind of a joke, almost like someone with 6 toes, which I know there's people out there, but it was just seeing it for the first time in real life. And then my buddy was like, yeah, I went to high school with 2 guys with it, and one guy never took his shirt off, and the other one just wore it like a champ and just didn't care at all. And so it's when you're growing up and you're young and you see things, it's like, oh wow, I've never seen that, whether it's the Eiffel Tower or an airplane or in this case an extra body part. And it was just something I had to scratch my head and think, wow, it's you can go through life, and now that I'm 40, I feel like I've seen and heard it all, but that was a first. And that only happened a week ago. So wow. I feel like life has all kinds of fun things in store for me after 40.
There we go. No, it's so keep life interesting for sure.
Yes, thank you, Lord, for putting me in that environment. Anyway, totally off topic, but let's get into it, Matt. This is an interesting conversation, one that especially now it becomes more increasingly important. And again, it's always an important topic. But when we talk about quality control, drilling fluids and products, they don't just come off one big shelf that everyone buys from. There's multiple shelves from multiple vendors, and some manufacture and some don't, and so on and so forth. But I think it'd be good to sort of unpack and sort of walk through the framework of which quality control exists, why it's important now, and then just running through some of the categories and just detailing why it's important for our business and sort of the outcomes and considerations that if quality control isn't maybe at the forefront of your decision making, that there may be some unintended things that can happen.
Yes.
So why now, Matt? Why are we talking about this right now?
Well, I think everybody's starting to see it. It seems to be taking longer than I would have thought, but the supply chain disruption of the Strait of Hormuz being closed for as long as it has been is really starting to become apparent, and it's not just $4 gas. It's throughout the supply chain. And so, one is everybody's rushing to the next available source, which is obviously increasing prices everywhere. And then there's there's still tremendous pressure to control prices and that sort of thing. And what happens is in that high pressure environment, sometimes you see people make compromises. And this can happen in different ways, but what I will say is with a robust quality control program, even if it was a supplier who says, "Oh, I'm sending you this," and they're selling you short, your process should be able to catch that.
Yeah.
I think also just under all of this sort of stress and pressure, when people have problems, they tend to say, "Oh, there's something wrong with your product." And very seldom is that the case, but I also think very seldom are people aware of the lengths that a established drilling fluids provider goes to ensure that what they are sending is what they said they sent.
Yes.
So I just thought it would be worth kind of outlining that as best we can.
No, that's perfect. Well, let's kind of start off with just sort of the broad quality control. How do we think through that from our side of the business?
So we have a written plan. This from just our products and quality control, our plan will take you through when a product starts out as an idea. So it could be customer requests. It could be we decide there's a business case, setting parameters for what we're going to do R&D on, all the way up to let's trial this new thing we've come up with, and then we've commercialized it because it's successful. And then even we are going to no longer offer this product. We have something else. And how do we make sure that every last, gallon of that is accounted for off the, you're not going to find it in the back corner of a warehouse, those kinds of things. So the plan sort of maps out all of those steps and everything you would do in between. And so it's going to outline these sets of processes. And they may or may not be audited externally. So our lab is ISO certified, which means that somebody who's trained to oversee an audit comes every few years, and they audit our processes. They say, "Show me the steps for how you receive a sample. Show me how you prove that someone is trained to run this test." Mm-hmm. So you show it's a lot of documentation. We do also a fair amount of internal audits in the interim, so we make sure that we stay on top of our targets. That's also some of the requirements as far as quality objectives, and it even has procedures that would explicitly state if something doesn't meet your quality control standards, what happened. So that could be a nonconformance report, what your corrective actions, those kinds of things. So a quality control plan can be quite elaborate and involve a lot of people.
Yeah. No, and this really came, you were instrumental in developing a quality control program. This isn't just sort of like a one-page document. This is a full-blown, almost department worth of people that are quality control, I won't say experts, but sort of a team of people that are constantly qualifying anything that comes into any material that comes through our doors, right?
Yes. And, it's, think about how elaborate these things can be. So the instrumentation we take to do measurements requires calibration at regular intervals. Probably the most miserable of the hundreds of these pieces of equipment we have to calibrate are, for LCMs, we do sieve testing. Those sieve screens have to be checked. So you're literally taking, pictures of all of the mesh and making sure it is compliant by the aperture space. It's the thing people look forward to the least.
Yeah.
It's one thing I hope that AI will be able to displace, but there's a number of those kinds of things that it's easy to take, for granted, but every piece of that equipment is back measured at regular intervals. And, this is one reason where automated systems, when we go to take these measurements, the nice thing is you put in, I use this piece of equipment, and it will go and make sure that the caliber, but we get emails, hey, you're 30 days out from this equipment, You want to do it as close to the deadline without exceeding the deadline as possible, but that requires paperwork and traceability and all that good stuff. So,
Man.
Yeah, it takes a lot of people. It's very demanding, and so I think that's probably why people get really wound up when there's questions like, "Oh, we think there's something wrong with your product," and you're like, "Really?" To be fair, like mistakes happen, but there are a lot of steps that are already in place that should catch those things. And so, I mean, that's the whole point of the process, is to have enough layers that something shouldn't slip through the cracks.
Sure. Talk about just the products side of it.
Yeah, so when we design a product, we'll test products for performance, and so how well does this emulsifier work at X pounds per barrel, or especially additive, what coefficient of friction reduction for a lubricant, those kinds of things. So when we have that product we like based upon that testing, that is the performance criteria. Then when you get into the quality specifications of, I want that molecule or I want that blend, there is a set of established properties that you're going to measure to say, okay, this product should always look like this if it's the product I'm buying. Those won't necessarily be the same thing. Like when I get a lubricant that I like, or a lubricant blend that I put together, I don't run it on the lubricity meter every time we make up a batch.
Right.
But what we do is we confirm that the compound that we made has all the same properties as the one we tested, and given it was acquired, and it should be the exact same thing, especially when you set enough criteria for what those properties are.
Got it. Okay. Talk about the kind of double clicking on the properties piece. Go into that.
So a lot of the properties, normally from a measurement perspective, I think this is one thing you want to use, like industry accepted measurements and methods. So this could be like ASTM has a lot of methods. So you'll say, hey, the specific gravity is going to range from this to this using this specific procedure that everybody in the manufacturing world knows. If you measure the kinematic viscosity, it's going to be based off of this approved procedure, and here is the range that it needs to be in. And when you have enough of these, odds are, if it meets all those properties, it's most likely what you bought. Given that's what they told you it was, it falls within all those ranges all at the same time. So it's a rapid way to sort of verify, what you have. A common one that we use also is something like FTIR.
Yeah.
And FTIR, there's sort of two ways to look at it, but what you do is you shoot infrared light at the material, and chemical bonds kind of wobble. Like a double bond will look a little different, and you'll get these peaks at different wavelengths. And you overlay that with the product you designed, and you should have a really close match. And not only a really close match as far as the overlays, but there shouldn't be some random peak over here. So even if, you can have a 98% match and also have this random constituent somewhere off to the side, so you look for both. And if you say, okay, there's no outliers, they look alike, all the other tests I did match, then we say, okay, thumbs up, I'm within range all the way across the board. This is what I say it is. Mm-hmm. And when we do blends, we test all our raw materials. So a lot of times, truck pulls up at the blending facility, or a rail car is dropped at one of our blending facilities. We won't accept that load until we've QC'd it.
Right.
So, I mean, the idea is the truck is going to wait for however long it takes us to do these checks, and then we say, okay, we'll receive it, because it better be what we bought.
Yeah.
We sure don't want to bring on something that wasn't.
Sure. Okay. One that we talk about a lot is the COA, or known as the Certificate of Analysis. I'm sure people have heard of this, but kind of provide some information and detail around what a certificate of analysis is.
So each blend or batch that you make is going to have a unique number to it. It'll usually, it'll be a series of numbers. Normally it has the date in there somewhere, or you can trace it back to a date. And it will be the actual measurement. So we talked about the properties, and it might say, look, the acceptable range is from this to this. I'll put my actual measurement on that certificate.
Right.
With check, accepted. And you might have, I mean, sometimes it can be 2 or 3, but sometimes it can be as many as 5 or 7 of these measurements. And it's this batch specifically, these are the numbers, the values of those properties to confirm that that material is what we say it is. And this number is also, so I have the certificate confirming the properties met what we said they are. And then this lot number is going to be printed on every label from that batch. And, you know, every tote, you look around, there's going to be a box on it, there's going to be a printed number. And so now, if there's ever any question, I can trace everything back to that one common blend. Before it got bagged, before it got toted. And so what we also have with our certificate of analysis is we'll keep a retain. So we'll actually keep a little jar of a sample, and we'll hold on to that. So now if there's any ever question wherever this material ends up, I have the paperwork showing it is what I said it was.
Yep.
I have an actual product sample, so if it somehow, let's say a tote gets emptied and then somebody puts something in there later, the label's still on it, oh, your product's bad. It's like, well, that isn't it, because here's the original batch. They don't match. This was affected somewhere outside of delivery.
Yeah.
And you'll hold on to that, and so you have all of this traceability. That should provide a fair amount of reassurance when you talk about especially some of these specialty products and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the traceability part's important, and it kind of ties back to, for like tying it to sort of maybe real world life. Not necessarily this is not real world, but my son's bat, for instance. When you buy a bat that has all the, like the QR code and the serial number and everything, and so his bat had a rattle in it. And so we're going to the warranty claim. And so basically we receive product, we use it, it doesn't work. Well, I mean, I never really paid attention, but bats have like a bunch of like traceability information and like the serial number and then even like the product code. So when I send it back to Rawlings, they're looking at, and for them, they have a quality control program as well, because they're pumping out millions of bats a year. And so there's even like numbers and batches and stuff for the certain bat and this, that, and the other. And so this stuff, like if you buy from a reputable company, likely they have good traceability to look back. And when they manufactured that bat that year, maybe that month, there was a manufacturing issue. And a lot of times they'll issue you a new bat and they'll say, yeah, looking at like this batch of bats that was made, we realized that, we had several other issues, same thing. And so it basically allows you to, if there is an issue, to trace back, fix it, and then improve on your manufacturing.
Yes.
It's the same whether it's bats or drilling fluids, but this stuff is so important, especially for a consumer, that if you get something that isn't necessarily what you thought it should be, or maybe there is a flaw, you can't really improve on something unless you have sort of these things in place, right?
Yes, and it provides a tremendous amount of assurance. I mean, so probably the really interesting one to me was to see safety valves, subsea safety valve manufacturing.
Oh, yeah.
So they will have the paperwork from the foundry that made the, aluminum ingot or, whatever. So they will have that COA. But think of every piece of metal that they use, every spring, from when it was made into a metal, before it was machined into a shape. Then they'll have the measurements of all the tolerances once it was machined into that shape. And then they will actually have, fit tests or pressure tests they did, to verify. And so, like, the documentation on one of those is like, a big dictionary.
Yeah. Wow.
And, I mean, several inches thick of just every number tracing back.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could go all the way back to the foundry if there was a question on the quality of the metal.
Yeah.
If there was a failure, right? Because the stakes are high.
Right.
And so, in our situation, it's a little messier in the chemicals world, especially oil field chemicals.
Yeah.
But a lot of this sounds pretty elaborate, but it's pretty common. Like, this is in the manufacturing world, this is the playbook.
Right.
And so, there's some form or fashion of this because we want to provide consistency. And if we don't, we want to know why, so it never happens again.
Right.
So
yeah, no, that's a great point, and I like the safety valve analogy. That in itself is, like you said, the stakes are high, and when you play for a premium product, this stuff almost always is in place. Talk about just overall quality control concerns, because that, right now, when, I'm just broadly speaking, not even drilling fluids, chemicals, but right now global supply chains are crazy. There might be companies looking at other sources because the cost is right. What kind of concerns are around if you just start scouring the planet for other sources that may or may not have these things in place?
I think there can be, there's the temptation, some things we catch are, if a price is too good to be true, it probably is. And so we'll say, hey, submit a sample for us to qualify you. We send it. Sample looks great. Then we get a truckload. Truckload doesn't, and a lot of this is the commodity products, right? Like it's just, things like lime, where we're a low volume consumer relative to, construction and a lot of other manufacturers.
Yeah.
And, hey, I can get it to you cheaper. You're trying to get it as cheap as possible because it's just a commodity, but you'll find some stuff that just, it's more dirt than lime, or it just doesn't have the purity. It doesn't. It takes a lot more than it would, in your typical applications. And so we've caught some of that stuff. I think there's a fair amount of, hey, I kind of found this one-off, and you receive it and it's a little out of spec, which is not okay unless, you're disclosing that something's a little out of spec.
Right.
And so we like to look at even, on COAs, we'll look at statistical drift just because it's okay. Are they starting to struggle over here at this plant? Like, it's yo-yoing around, or it's still within spec, but it's not behaving the same.
Yeah.
And I mean by their manufacturing processes, like 1 week it looks like this and meets these numbers that are way at the high end of the range, and then all of a sudden it's the low end of the range. We like to initiate those conversations early because then our vendors know we're watching.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be a fair amount of pressure on, like, hey, I can get you this, and it not being exactly, or it not being as consistent. Sort of, I'm hoping no one will notice.
Right.
I think there's, other areas where I think we've talked about xanthan gum and what a mess that can be, but like you'll start seeing people like throw guar in there, or just doing other things where it's like, okay, this isn't it's not what I'm paying for, and so you kind of know what to look for, and hopefully your QC tests check for that stuff. But even right now, like, because the price of diesel is so high, I'm not saying we've seen it yet, but this is usually about the time in the cycle when we see biodiesel in diesel and it saponifies and we see weird viscosity stuff, and normally, other people start to notice it too, and then it sort of goes away for a while. But some of these things have rhythms with the season, if you will.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And so that goes back to what, when we do have to challenge one of our own vendors, or if we're challenged ourselves, first things first, real quick, I can pull up my database, and here's a certificate of analysis. Met the specification, somebody's put their name on it, like, barring some issue with the equipment that we have traceability on the calibration, it should be exactly what we said it was.
Right.
Let me go pull that quarantine sample from that lot number of concern. Let me check it for performance. Does everything we said it's going to do. If there's any other questions, that lot number is another way to say, hey, look, don't use that stuff right now. Keep it in the warehouse. Let's do our due diligence, and we'll just make sure everything's okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't take very long.
Right.
Most of the time, overwhelmingly, when somebody says, I think you have a problem with your product, it ties back to a operational behavioral issue. And this is why, as much as we have quality control on our products, we also have a service quality plan.
Yeah.
And the service quality plan is supposed to characterize how we consistently deliver and execute on those products through the MUD program, through other things. They sort of go hand in hand, because how you use the products is almost as important, if not more important, than what you have on hand.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so there's a lot more to this, but I felt like it was at least kind of in the mud world and where we're at right now, this is stuff that I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on.
Yes.
And you know, we try and keep all our ducks in a row, and you know, that's kind of what is expected of most everybody.
Yeah.
So
no, it's a great point, and it's again, depending on where you're at in the season, a lot of this stuff can be scrutinized or, like you said, looked at a little more closely. And right now, things are just, there's a lot of question out there, not necessarily just with quality control and drilling fluids, but just on where and what and how we're going to keep moving forward at the same pace. If a lot of the stuff is you know, just shipping lanes and global supply chains are all, you know, messed up in the moment. And the unfortunate part is we just don't know when or how this will end. And so with all that being said, it's, you know, there's just more emphasis on making sure what we're delivering is what we say it is, and doing our job internally to make sure that we do our part. And really, it's just educating folks as well. I mean, a lot of people probably hadn't heard of they might have heard of quality control, but, you know, after hearing Matt obviously describe the different pieces of it, and we just brushed the surface, it's a good conversation. And I encourage anyone out there that's in the space, if you would like us to dive into anything further, not necessarily specifics to our products, but just on the program or how we put this stuff in place, and maybe more specifics, like, we're happy to chat about it. Or if you have any sort of, you know, quality control stories, that's always a good one too. But I encourage everyone to reach out. If you have any questions, thoughts, or ideas for a show, not even to do with quality control, let us know. With that said, Matt, anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think that's all I got.
Cool. Well, again, thanks for the listeners. Always really appreciate the support. Subscribe. Check out the YouTube channel. The LinkedIn page for AES has a ton of information on there. And until next time, folks, be safe. Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks for listening. Please tune in next week for another exciting episode of the Flowline. And remember, may your returns always be full and your trips always smooth. Views expressed in this program belong to participants and not their employees. The program is for informational purposes only and cannot take the place of seeking professional advice. Copyright AES Drilling Fluids.